Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing some French country thrift flips using IOD, Woodubend and Fusion milk paint. If you're new here and you like thrift flips and crafts, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our first project is this lovely solid wooden mirror. It is beautiful, but it is a bit plain and I am not a fan of that orange wood tone. My first step is to remove that little plaque. You can see I've already covered up the glass there to protect it, and now I'm going to use a piece from Woodubend. I will put the number for this one in the description. And when you're using Woodubend, you want to heat it up first because it can get warped in shape, but heating it up is going to allow you to bend and manipulate it into the shape that you need. You really should do this even if it's a flat surface to make sure that you have really good contact. You can see here that I'm able to bend and flex it, but you can only do this while it has been warmed up. Now I'm going to use some strong wood glue to attach it to the top of my mirror. Once I've covered the back well with glue, I'm going to position it in the center up the top, doing my best just by eye at this point to see that it is centered. And once I have it in position, I'm going to get my hairdryer again to heat up the Woodubend again. This is going to make sure that it sits flat and it's going to help that glue dry a bit quicker. I'm using a baby wipe to clean up any excess glue. I'm now going to mix up some of Fusion's toasted coconut milk paint. I'm putting 2 capfuls into my container, and remember, when you're doing milk paint you need to do equal parts. So I've done 2 capfuls of the milk paint, so I need to do 2 capfuls of the water. And once I have that together, I'm going to mix it really well. If you want your milk paint to be a bit thicker, then you can leave out a little bit of the water. Now I'm going to add an even coat over the entire mirror. This is just our base coat. I'm not going to do any speeding up of the drying process here. I just need to get that foundation down. Remember, you can find a full product list in the description of this video and all these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. I noticed that a couple of holes were not being filled in the way I wanted with the milk paint, so I'm using some air dry clay and working it into the little nail holes from where our plaque was and a bit of a gouge on the side there. And once that's dry, I'm able to come in with my second coat of that milk paint. You can see it has really good coverage, and this is the coat that I'm going to come in and speed up shortly. I'm using a heat gun. You can also use a hairdryer for this, and I'm going to speed that process up so we can get some of that wonderful crackle, some of that wonderful chippiness, because I am going for a vintage look. You can see here that there is some lovely cracking and chipping of that paint going on. Here you can see the cracking and chipping that was achieved by speeding up that drying process. I love the effect that this gives. It really gives it a wonderfully aged look. Look at all that flaking up paint. It's just gorgeous, and that crackle, there really is nothing like it. So once my paint is all dry, I'm coming in with IOD's paint blade. You can use a spatula, whatever you like, and I'm scraping off any of the loose paint. Sometimes it's going to show the lighter paint underneath, other times it's going to go right down to the wood. It's a little bit unpredictable in that respect. Now I'm coming in with some 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to go around the edges of the mirror and lightly distress to bring back some of that wood tone. Now I'm going to use a baby wipe, and I'm going to go around the edges of the mirror and just sort of soften up that paint, and then I'm coming in with a razor here just to try and get as much of that paint off as possible, and I'm being careful not to damage my mirror. And now I'm coming in and sealing the entire mirror with Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear. I'll then use a microfiber cloth to buff that wax out. Before my wax is completely dry, I'm going to use a small artist brush with some of Dixie Belle's Dixie Dirt in Charcoal. I'm adding this to certain details where I think that age would naturally accumulate, and you can see I'm also wiping back the excess with another microfiber cloth. This is a great way to add a bit of age to your piece without having to use wax. It really does look like dirt. It's definitely an authentic way of achieving that vintage look. You can see I'm just putting it wherever I think that that dirt might naturally occur. This mirror project was super fun, but it was a little bit tricky to film at times. So when I'm about to show you our final results, I was able to remove some reflections. Here is the finished result. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I just think that that chippy paint has just given it a whole lot of character, and the Woodubend adds that touch of French country elegance. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Our next project is this lovely wooden clock. I put a short up on my YouTube channel and you guys overwhelmingly voted that I should paint this, and I have to agree. So my first step is to come in and tape off the interior. I really like the clock face and I don't want to accidentally have paint dripping down there. So I'm going to tape that off with some masking tape, and I'm also going to remove all of the hardware, that little handle and also the hinges, so that I don't get any paint on them. Just a little tip, I recommend that you put all of your screws and handles and things in a little Ziploc bag so that you don't lose them. I decided to go one step further, and I'm adding some cling wrap also to the face of the clock to protect it and taping that down. I'm going to be using milk paint. It's very runny and hard to control, so better to be safe than sorry. I wasn't exactly sure how to approach this, and when I'm in this position, I tend to grab out my favorite cream tone, Buttercream chalk paint by Dixie Belle, and I will paint my entire project in that color. I really feel like it gives me a wonderful blank slate so that I can plan better. I did love those little cow stamps, but I just felt like I could do a lot more with this piece. So I'm going to go around and give it just one coat of Dixie Belle's Buttercream chalk mineral paint so that I have a blank slate to work with and I can figure out what I'm going to do with this beautiful clock. I want to thank all of you that did comment on my Would You Paint It short for this project. You gave me some amazing ideas and it really did help with the inspiration for this piece. Once my paint has completely dried, I'm going to grab my IOD Swags and Classic Elements molds. I'm using a fast cast resin today. I usually use amazing casting resin. You pour out equal parts A and B, then you mix them together. When you're ready, you stir really, really well, and then you need to be careful to pour them into your molds quite quickly because it does set up in about 10 minutes. So I'm casting one of my favorite elements from the Classic Elements mold, and then I'm also going to be pouring one of the smaller shapes from the Swag mold and another piece from the Classic Elements. Wasn't exactly sure where I was going with this just yet, but I decided to cast them in resin in case I was going to have a piece without a back to support it. I like to do that and have that resin because it's just stronger than clay. So I've removed my castings, and I did consider putting my mold up above the point of the house, and for that I need it to be rigid, so I did have a bit of a play to work out what I wanted to do. And while I was still thinking about that, I decided to focus on the face of the clock. So I'm casting the trim from the primitive mold, and you can see I'm going to put it around the edge of the glass face, and then I'm grabbing 2 corner pieces from the Dainty Flourishes mold, and I'm going to put one of those in each of the corners. Here you can see that I'm just arranging the trim in a way that fits it perfectly, and then I am gluing down each of my molds with a strong wood glue. Once I have all my castings glued down, I'm going to wipe off the excess glue with a baby wipe. Now I need to attach my castings to the top of the clock, so I've worked out the arrangement and I'm using Gorilla Super Glue gel to attach it to the top. It's a very strong adhesive and I'm glad that I made that out of resin because it is going to sit up the top without any support on the back. So I'm going to add that same glue to each of them. I really could have done these in clay as well, but as I said before, I really thought that I was going in a different direction with this, and projects evolve and we just need to adapt. So I'm just going to glue these down, and once that's completely dry, I've come in the next day and you can see here I have got some separation. I didn't paint these, I should have, I usually do, but we can fix that. So I'm going to cast a little bit more of the exact same trim using my Jovi air dry clay, and then I'm going to measure out how much I need and very carefully cut off the amount that I need to fill in the gap. I'm just using a craft knife to do this. And once I have the amount that I need, I'm going to use that same strong wood glue to glue it down. And I'm going to repeat the same process for each of those gaps. So just keep this in mind, that if you come in the next day, you've got a gap in your clay trim, you can always cast a little bit more, or you can just put a little bit more clay in that gap. It's always fixable, guys. Try not to be disheartened. Next, I'm going to be mixing up a light brown tone. I'm going to be mixing pretty much equal parts of Dixie Belle's Burlap and Chocolate Chalk Mineral Paint. I probably could have used the paint Mud Puddle or Pine Cone for this, but I didn't have any open and I like to use what I've got open first. So this is just a little color that I mixed up because I want to be able to see this underneath my final coat of milk paint in a little bit. So to start off with, I am dabbing and stippling on the paint with a chip brush, and I'm going to work my way around the clock, and anywhere that I want the opportunity to distress it back or to see perhaps some chipping underneath, I'm going to put that brown paint. I apply quite a lot of it. Remember, that white paint that's down was there just so that I had that blank slate to work with. So I'm just going to go around and add that paint anywhere I want to be able to distress back. And I really thought that the dabbing and stippling motion would be enough texture for what I was trying to achieve. But shortly you will see that I do grab some sea spray, and I'm going to add sea spray texture additive to my paint because as I was doing this, it wasn't the amount of texture that I wanted. I want this to look really old and weathered. So I'm going to add just I think about a half a capful of that sea spray to my paint that I already had mixed up. I'm going to stir it up really well, and then I'm going to go back over the top of the areas that I already added my brown paint, and I'm going to add more of that texture because when you're working with creating an aged finish, it really is all about the layers, so you've got to think about that when you're approaching a project like this. Once my paint is completely dry, I'm going to come in with some candle wax. I've just got a little candle there that I'm running over any areas that I want to be able to distress back. Because chalk paint is porous, milk paint loves porous surfaces, I need to create a resist so I can get a chippy, weathered finish here. Next, I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that wonderful toasted coconut milk paint by Fusion. I'm just mixing up 1 capful this time to 1 capful of water, stirring it really, really well. Milk paint is perfect if you want to achieve a vintage look, so it's definitely something that I recommend if you're wanting to achieve that. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to apply 1 heavy coat. I want to do 1 coat here because I've got that wax down and I don't want to disturb that until I want to come in and distress my piece. So I'm coming in thick with this milk paint because that 1 coat is going to be enough so that we can distress it back later. At this point, I was really glad as I was applying that milk paint that I took the time to go back in and add that sea spray. Here you can see that I'm coming in and I'm speeding up the drying process on this coat that I've added, and it is already starting the cracking process. And now I'm ready to move on to the rest of the clock. And again, I'm applying it really heavy. And something you might notice is that when you speed up the drying process and you've got a puddle sort of paint in between the castings that I've got there, for example, is the paint does sort of shrink and bubble and pull back. If you don't like that, you need to be a bit more patient with your drying time, or make sure you spread out your paint a little bit more evenly. I don't mind that because I'm able to often come back and distress that. So again, I've applied that one coat and I'm coming in now with my heat gun. I'm going to work in sections so that I can speed up that process and get that wonderful chippy cracked effect. Once my milk paint has completely dried, we can get to the fun distressing part. So I've just got actually a little transfer tool, just a little rigid tool here to start the process, and I am just scraping along the milk paint, and you can already see that it is pulling back off the peaks and some of that brown paint is showing through. I then grabbed my sandpaper, just a 220 grit here, and I am going around and lightly distressing the trim that we added around the clock face there, and you can see that brown paint pulling through. And I'm also going to hit the corners, and I'm just loving the effect that having that brown paint underneath has had. If I hadn't put that wax down, I don't think I would be able to go to this layer. I think it would probably just go straight back down to the clay. So I definitely think adding that wax is a really good thing to do if you're wanting to have layers. So here you can see I've switched to a spatula that I'm using just to do a bit of scraping, and I'm going to work my way around the clock, repeating the same process, scraping away the paint and also using some sandpaper along the edges and some of the details. Once I'm finished distressing, I'm going to remove the paint from the clock face. So I'm first softening the paint with a wet wipe, and then I'm coming in with that razor on the glass to remove the excess paint. I'm going to have to do this on the front of the clock face and also on the back. Next, I'm going to seal the entire clock using Dixie Belle's Clear Best Dang Wax, and I'm going to buff back the excess using a microfiber cloth. Once I'm finished waxing my piece, I am going to remove the plastic from the clock face very carefully, and it's definitely given us a more tidy line. Next, I'm going to be reattaching the hinges to the door of the clock first, and then once I have the hinges on the door, I'm then able to go in and attach the door to the clock itself. I'm actually really glad that I didn't leave these on. I feel like that lovely brass color goes beautifully with the toasted coconut fusion milk paint. And here's our finished clock. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I hope you guys are happy with the direction that I went with this one. There were so many possibilities. Let me know in the comments what you think of this project. Our final project is this sweet white jug. They're one of my favorite things to work on. I'm going to be using IOD's new Rural Scenes stamp. I love this little windmill design, and I am going to see how I go stamping directly onto that crockery. I'm going to see how I go here. So I'm adding some of IOD's permanent black ink. You can see I have my jug cushioned between the container that I keep my stamps in and the stamp itself. I'm positioning it carefully and then pressing down. You want to go slow here because it may slip and smudge. You definitely need to go slow with this process. And then I've pulled it straight up, and I'm actually really happy with how that looks. I am then going to heat set my ink with my heat gun. This is microwave safe, so I knew that it would be okay with me adding the heat to it without cracking. But I did decide that I wanted to add another element to the other side. So I've grabbed another piece from the rural stamps. I'm inking that up, and I'm going to very carefully steady my little jug and then carefully press down. Again, I really must stress how important it is that you go slow with this and that you always have your hands on that stamp, because crockery is very slippery. If you make a mistake, you could take a baby wipe and just wipe it off straight away and go again, but definitely take your time. Try not to shift it at all because the smudges do show. So once I'm finished, I've pulled it up and I'm pretty happy with how that looks. And here's our finished jug. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It was a little bit tricky, but I think it was definitely worth stamping directly onto that crockery. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed today's projects. It was lots of fun working with that milk paint again and combining it with IOD, Woodubend and stamps. I had a lot of fun. Let me know if you have a favorite from today's video. If you enjoyed today's projects, please hit that thumbs up, comment, and share this video out to a friend that you think might enjoy it. If you haven't already, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used in today's video on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.